We'll come to order and begin our meeting. We've got a full agenda today, so I want to make sure we get started on time and we're expeditious. Please silence your cell phones. And I would ask now please turn your cell phones to silent, and then our prayer will be offered by Representative Kelvin Lawrence.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we come today, first of all, to give you thanks. Thank you for the blessing that you bestowed upon us, Father God. Father, we now come that you would ask that you would come into this meeting as we prepare to do the work of the people here in the state of Alabama. Father, we ask that you would bind our minds, our hearts together, that we do the right thing for all Alabamians. And Father, we ask you that you continue to bless us individually, collectively. And when you do these things, Father, we'll be careful to give your name all the praise and all the honor. It is Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Clerk will call the roll. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Representative Collins. Here. Representative Coleman. Representative Daniels.
Here.
Representative Ellis. Here. Representative Faulkner. Here. Representative Lawrence. Here. Representative Lover. Here. Representative Stubbs. Here. Representative Wood. Here. 14 members absent, the roll quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Do we have any guests today for any member? Representative Baker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I do have a page. Gavin, if you'd stand. I have from Bruton City Schools, an 8th grader, then Gavin Rogers, who's paging with us this week. Very honored to have him with us. Thank you so much, Gavin.
Welcome, Gavin. Thank you. Just as a way of information, Senator Orr filed the Senate version of the budget last night. It should be in committee today, I think, maybe possibly on the Senate floor tomorrow. So we'll be seeing the budget coming down our way sooner rather than later. So we have a pretty full agenda today. Let's try to work through this thing expeditiously. The first bill is SB 207. Representative Randy Price will be handled today. Representative Wood, you're welcome to stay right where you are if you want to, because I understand this is really an easy one.
Currently, under existing law, there's various programs that allow income tax checkoffs for your state income tax return only. This bill would allow you to do that if you wanted your refund to go towards Medicaid, towards state parks. You could just check that off. It's just a simple, just giving people more freedom to do what they want to with their money.
And Representative Wood, is this the same bill we passed for you? So explain that, please.
Yes, sir. It's the exact same bill that we had in the House, and it passed unanimously.
So it passed our committee and passed the House. So this is just basically the Senate version of your House bill.
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion. Representative Faulkner moves.
Second.
Second, Representative Collins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bill's given a favorable report. Next up, HB 253 with Representative Clark with substitute and amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee. At last week's public hearing, I explained that the main purpose of this bill was to increase the annual allotment of tax credits from $20 million to $40 million, and that was due to the wide success of the Historic Rehabilitation Program and the number of programs that are awaiting funding. Now, you know, and like I know, that timing is everything, and as Ashley McClain pointed out last week, there are quite a few tax incentive bills being introduced this session. So at this time, we'd like the committee to approve the amendment that you referenced, Mr. Chairman, and I think Representative Colvin is prepared to do that. You asked last week, Mr. Chairman, if the cap had ever been adjusted, and I understand that it has not been, that it has always been a $20 million max cap. The bill would expand the Historic Tax Credit Evaluating Committee, as I explained last week, to include the chairs of the House and the Senate ETF committees or their designees. It would also allow the committee to meet remotely, in person, or a combination thereof. The bill also would establish additional criteria in the project evaluation process, and this would be criteria that would help to demonstrate the return on investment. Lastly, there is additional language to allow the tax credits to be claimed for when the reservation is allocated to a project in addition to when the project is placed into service. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions for you.
First, let me thank you for your cooperation. This has been an important issue, something you're very passionate about, and we certainly are supportive of this. The overall cap for this program has been $200 million. That sunsets in 2027. Is that correct? So we'll be revisiting
correct.
this very shortly. The issue here about the amendment was, do we increase the annual cap? And given everything on our plate, I appreciate your cooperation in that regard. I think we'll have an amendment for that. But any questions about the substitute bill? You recall last week we had the sub. Representative Clark explained it. We had a public hearing. Any questions about the sub? Okay, so at the appropriate time, we'll do that. Do we have an amendment? I'll entertain that amendment. Representative Colvin? We have to adopt the substitute. So that was what Representative Drummond was just telling me we need to do. Thank you very much. Is there a second? Second by Representative Baker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now the appropriate time is to have an amendment if there's one. Representative Colvin?
This amendment just changes that annual cap from 40 back down to 20 as agreed upon by the necessary parties. So at the appropriate time, I'll make a motion to adopt the amendment.
I'll second.
Second by Representative Chestnut. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So now we have the amendment with a sub with amendment. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the sub as amended. Favorable report. Thank you. Representative Drummond moves favorable report. Second.
Second.
Second by Representative Chestnut. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bill's given a favorable report. Thank you again. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm next. HB 334. This was the SUN Act. This is the deal that basically established the education savings account for those students with unique needs. That'd be students with disabilities, students who are homeless, students who are foster or adopted, students with military parents. This is a school choice approach that has been offered around surrounding states. Fiscal note was $3 million. So that was the bill. The amendment, let's see, the substitute you have, I think you had last week, but there are actually, no, excuse me, there's no substitute. There's two amendments. And basically, I'll say this before we get into the basic amendment that's the long amendment is simply due to the fact that previously we were going to use the Department of Revenue as the administering group for the ESAs. We're going to use the State Department of Education. In discussions with both those groups, they felt like it was more appropriate. So the 7 pages of amendments are basically changing the definition of department and referencing the Department of Education versus Department of Revenue. There is another amendment that will be offered. So at this point, I would like to, let's take the easy amendment first. Representative Collins, you have an amendment, I believe. We had a public hearing on this bill last week, so.
I'm willing to offer the amendment that replaces on line 56, page 2, participating school, a private school including church, parochial, or religious school, and that's how that goes. On 204, allowing participating schools and education providers to, and the same thing on 209. On 222, removing participating schools and education providers that. In 240, the State Department may bar participating schools, and then replace 244 with determines the participating school has done any of the following. And then lastly, 266, that it applies to the participating schools. And so it's just trying to strengthen the language about who's participating and how they participate.
And clarifying that private schools include church schools and parochial schools.
Correct.
Any questions or comments about that amendment? Entertain a motion.
I made the motion.
She made the motion, second by Representative Faulkner. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The second amendment is that I will have, and again, it's you have it before you. It's 7 pages, but again, what it does, after line 27 on page 1, insert the following and renumber the subsequent divisions accordingly. Number 1, department, the State Department of Education. So it now changes throughout the document. It previously said Department of Revenue. Now it just says department, and department is defined as the State Department of Education. So what we are doing is basically making sure that runs through the document. So that first change is the initial definition. Then we replace lines 30 through 31 on page 2 with the following: for students and approved by the department. Lines 57, 58 on page 3 replaced with the following: provides education to K-12 students and has notified the department of its intention to participate in the clarification. Replace lines 24 through 126 on page 5 with the following: section 5A, the State Board of Education shall adopt rules as necessary for the administration of the program by the department. On page 2 of the amendment, B, the department shall establish education. That's part of that previous change. Next, replace lines 129 through 134 on page 5 with the following: receiving applications and determining student eligibility in accordance with this section. Upon approval of an application, the student shall be included for funding. Next, replace lines 138 through 141 on page 5 and 6 with the following: returning any unused funds to the department when a student is no longer eligible for an education scholarship account. The funds returned to the department shall be allocated to the resident. Replace line 149 on page 6 with the following: the department shall receive 5. Replace lines 154 through 162 on page 6 with the following: providers shall submit reports quarterly to the department detailing the number of students participating, services provided, and other information requested by the department. F, to avoid duplicate payments, the department shall compare the list of participating students with the public school enrollment list before each program payment is made. G, the department shall conduct or contract. Then next, replace line 164 on page 6 with the following: at a minimum, the department shall conduct random. Replace line 70 on page 7 with the following: found, the department shall refer the case to local. Again, these are just clarifications, technical cleanups. Replace line 172 on page 7 with the following: the department shall. Replace line 176 on page 7 with the following: the department to establish their students. Replace line 182 on page 7 with the following: responsibilities of the department. Replace lines 184 through 185 on page 7 with the following: education service providers on the department's website. Replace lines 189 through 190 on page 7 with the following: and graduation rates to the public on department's website commencing with the 4th year of test. And replace lines 195 through 196 on page 7 with the following: provide graduation rates to the public on the department's website commencing with the 4th. Replace line 199 on page 8 with the following: appropriately, the State Board of Education shall adopt rules. And replace line 202 on page 8 with the following: the department shall develop a system. Replace line 205 on page 8 with the following: invoice the department for qualified expenses. Or replace line 208 on page 8 with the following: the department may make direct payments. Replace lines 213 on page 8 with the following: department to be commercially viable or cost. Replace lines 217 on page 8 with the following: the State Board of Education may also provide by. Replace lines 220 on page 8 with the following: the department shall adopt a process for. Replace lines 224 on page 8 with the following: the department shall establish or. Replace lines 227 on page 9 with the following: the department shall establish or. Replace line 230 on page 9 with the following: section 8A, the department shall be. Replace line 235 on page 9 with the following: the department shall conduct or contract. Replace line 240 on page 9 with the following: the department may bar a participating school. Replace line 243 on page 9 with the following: education scholarship accounts if the department. Replace lines 254 on through 257 on page 10 with the following. Provider is barred from the program. The provider is barred from the program. The department should notify eligible students and their parents of the decision as soon as practicable. The department shall coordinate the prohibition or coincide with. Replace line 261 on page 10 with the following. Appeal of the department's decision. Replace line 282 on page 11 with the following. Filing with the department prior to the. Replace line 288 on page 11 with the following. Filing with the department prior to the. Replace line 304 on page 11 with the following. Department on an annual basis beginning with the. Replace line 307 on page 11 with the following. Allows the department to aggregate data as. Replace line 309 on page 12 with the following. Inform the department of an. Those are the changes that are primarily clarification or technical. Any questions or comments? Motion by Representative Faulkner, second Representative Lovern. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Amendment's adopted. Representative Collins.
I think with all the changes, it's not going to line up. So if it's all right, I'll just get it ready for the floor.
Okay,
after we
okay.
do it.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd be happy to tell what it was.
Okay, please do, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because of the changes, I don't think I'm on the right line number, but the testing was requiring the state testing. And what we've done in some of the other bills, because that's not what they use, is to require, in order to get the tax dollars, a nationally normed test. And so I'll just have that ready for the floor once we see where it lines up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the bill as with two amendments. I'll entertain a motion. Representative Collins, second Representative Faulkner. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Bill's given a favorable report. Thank you. Next is HB 315, Representative Starnes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. House Bill 315 is a bill for the Alabama National Guard. Under existing law, educational benefits are available to spouses, deceased or totally disabled veterans, or those who were a prisoner of war while serving as a member of the United States Armed Forces. This bill would expand benefits to include the spouses of those who were killed while on state active duty status, or whose death results approximately within 3 years of injury sustained while on state active duty status. And basically what it is if you get activated for state orders for a disaster of a hurricane, we're on state orders at that time until the president declares it state of emergency. So we're on state orders at that time. So we're just asking, while we're on state orders, if there's an injury or a death of that service member, that the spouse is able to carry through her education benefits.
So thank you. One question I had was about that state. Just if you restate that again, when it says state orders or state active, explain what that is.
Yes, sir. Basically, when a National Guardsman gets activated for a hurricane or any natural disaster, normally you're placed on state orders first until the president declares it a state of emergency, and then you're Title 10, which is you're federalized at that time.
Okay. Any questions or comments for the sponsor? Favorite report, Representative Colvin.
Second.
Second by Representative Keel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bill's given a favorite report. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, sir.
HB 325, Representative Harbison.
Good morning, committee. Thanks for hearing my bill this morning. What HB 325 does is related specifically to Coleman County. I took this bill from several other counties that have passed the same bill, and what it does is it exempts food pantries that have non-paid employees from any type of sales tax for food, cleaning products, or feminine hygiene products.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question
Representative Almond.
for you. I know, this is the same tax exemption that we were discussing in the last couple of weeks. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you help me analyze What's the analysis here?
There's no fiscal.
There's no fiscal note because I think it says, the fiscal note says that it would decrease sales and tax receipts to the education trust fund by a small, undetermined amount by exempting any food pantry in Coleman County from paying state, local, and municipal sales tax and use taxes. So I think it's a de minimis amount, but there's no dollar amount associated with it.
Well, I guess thank you. I guess my question is really broader than that, and that is, so previously we were talking about specific organizations that have been in existence 3 years or more, or in some cases not quite 3 years. This is not a specific organization, as best I can tell, and I'm not trying to.
We have one in Coleman. It was made for, but the reason we worded it like this is because there are several other counties that have the same bill, and we just took the same bill and made it for Coleman. It does just impact one food pantry, but I didn't name it because we were just trying to be just like the other bills that are already in place.
Representative Collins might shed some light.
Okay, Ms. Collins?
Well, I just wanted to know, are they under the United Way? Are they one of the United Way?
You know, I honestly don't know if they are or not.
If they're under that umbrella, then they already have this benefit. That's why I'm asking the question.
They came to me and Senator Gudger and asked us to carry this bill. The problem for all of us is this has been done in the past, and we've got these other counties that do it, and she knew it when she came to me, and that's why we just took what she asked for, and since she's not currently being exempt. So I would imagine she's not under United Way because she is currently required to pay the sales tax.
So they're not picking on you, but what's happened?
I understand. I'm sure.
I know what's happened. Like several years ago, we had this effort to basically try to not have everybody have to come before us to get. So we had this umbrella. That umbrella was not wide enough. So every once in a while, we'll still get one off, and so we're kind of going back to where we started. And I think people are just trying to wrap their heads around what have we done, where are we, where are we going, what can we do?
Yeah, I didn't take it that way. Yeah. It puts us in a tough spot because I understand where it could impact the budget, and they see other counties doing it, and they wonder why we don't do it, and so
we have the same issues, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around. When we approve it, when we don't.
I think, regardless of what happens with this bill, I think it'd be a good to do a subcommittee again to just relook at this issue. And I would ask that Senator Representative Almond be the chair of that subcommittee. I'll let you choose your other members, but I think that. But I do appreciate the question. I really do, because this is an area we're here to basically follow policy and adopt policy, and policy is something we need to do that's good and sound and whatever. And this is an area that we're just struggling with. So, Representative Drummond.
Just a quick question, since Representative Almond is going to be the chair. And I guess I'm asking this, if I could, of Representative Collins. Didn't we do a subcommittee to look at this before? And I never heard because I'm like the representative. I had an organization that was trying to get exempt. We didn't do it, but we had somebody to look at it statewide. And can you share what happened with that subcommittee? Because I sympathize with my colleague, because there are so many organizations out there that are in the same situation.
Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, if you knew a legislator, you might have a chance to have yours. There was no rhyme or reason. There was no even. It was not like food pantries. There are lots of things that are very good things. They benefit our communities and things like that. Representative McMillan chaired that subcommittee. I probably have a stack this high of stuff, which I'm happy to share with Chairman Almond. And work on this. I would love to see a little bit more. I think when we put the things under the United Ways, because those are in our communities, and we thought that might give it a little bit more stability, so that things were similar, and that if you were a food pantry, you were probably under that United Way, and so then you would be covered. But it's not worked out that way, and so there was no clear-cut, easy answer. It's going to be a challenge because it looks different. He's right. There are counties that haven't, and there are lots of counties that do not.
And this is a small deal, but that initial policy that came out actually excluded some pretty legitimate organizations that were not under the United Way definition. So we began to make one-off. I might have offered one of those at one point, but then it just can continue to be this. So I think it's good for us to revisit.
Well, just to be noted, Mr. Chair, United Way, I've served on the board in Mobile. They have a process of who they take in, and there's everybody does not get in.
Well, that's why.
So I just think we keep that in mind, because we keep talking about United Way, and there's another process.
Well, that was why they, I think, initially did that umbrella. Representative Faulkner?
How many food pantries are there in the state of Alabama?
I have no clue.
Somebody spoke out of order, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering how many we had, and because it does sound like a good thing. And apparently, other counties have. I don't know if sponsor knows, Representative Harbison.
I can't tell you how many food pantries, and then you're going to get into, like my bill, I made sure to only exempt food pantries with non-paid employees. You're going to get into a situation where you have food pantries with the non-paid employees that are truly there, just nonprofit, volunteering, and then you're going to get into ones that are there, and you've got an executive that's making, a salary, and that's not my goal at all to exempt those. And I do think overall in the nonprofits, if you have paid employees, that's a different category. But gosh, I don't know if there's a real way to tell unless you just went county by county surveying. I don't know that there's a database that keeps up with that.
Well, excuse me. That's important, though. I guess you just noted that you made restricted yours to. It's going to be restricted to the ones in Coleman County that have non-paid employees. Correct. Okay.
Mine would not allow a food pantry that has a paid employee to be tax exempt.
Well, I'll move for favorable report.
Yeah, let me just mention, I would like for Representative Almond's committee also to kind of consider the fact, we're looking at policy, right? So if you do all food pantries, you got to define narrowly so we don't have people getting loopholes. Also, we have a lot of these that exempt state, local, and county taxes. That, I have supported those in the past, but that's a little bit, do we really want to do that? Do we want to just limit the state? Do we want to look at all the others right now? But that's something, again, that I think we'll develop a committee, and I will look for your recommendation on who you would like the 2 or 3 people that you want to be. She'll be a subcommittee, and then I say I'm gonna let her recommend who she would like to help her assist in this, because it's an important issue. And again, go back, we're policymakers, right? So we need to have good policy, and that's fair and sustainable. Yes, Representative Collins.
I will say this, that several years ago when we were looking into this, one of the things that we did was we asked Department of Revenue to they collect information about how much funding those organizations that have this benefit actually receive as a benefit. So, because before we didn't know any idea how much the cost to this benefit was. And so they are collecting that information, so including them and their information would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a motion by Representative Faulkner. Do we have a second? Representative Keel? Well, let Representative Almond second that. Okay, Representative Almond's a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say to the committee, I do appreciate your diligence. This committee is not a rubber stamp committee. It should not be. I think we should challenge everything, so I appreciate that. Next up, Representative South, follow that. HB 358.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the spirited debate, and I bring forth another one of those exemption bills. So thank you for the timing. Mr. Chairman and members, this one is for High Socks for Hope. This is David Robertson, the pitcher for the New York Mets, is nonprofit for disaster relief. It was born out of the 2011 tornadoes, and they have focused on disaster relief not only in our state but 16 other states. The fiscal note on this for the state portion of it's about $800. Most of that will be through the local and municipal taxes, but it would be a sales and use tax exemption.
Any questions for sponsor? Favor report motion by Representative Keel, second Representative Ellis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bill's given
Thank
to
you,
the
members
board.
of the
Thank you,
committee.
sir. Okay. Next, we have Representative Chip Brown, HB 293, a bill with substitute and an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill is subbed out of the Ports Committee last week. I do understand we have an amendment coming at the appropriate time by the chairman. What this does, it's the port credits bill. We passed this, the legislature passed this several years ago. And what this does, it amends just one section in there. Currently, our incentives on here are at 5%. And what this does to make us more competitive with our neighboring states, particularly Georgia and South Carolina, it just increases, it adds on page 4, there's a table that adds additional incentives on there, up to 25%. And these, of course, are done by TEUs, which are 20-foot equivalent unit, or VEUs, which are vehicle equivalent units, or per kilogram for our airports. This is worked on by Ports Committee, by Department of Commerce, and by our port folks. And so it's, you know, we've got our port is growing. We've got the fastest growing port in the country. Our container terminal is up by 55% over the last 10 years. Our coal is going from a net importer to an exporter, but we're currently not shipping any of the vehicles through the Port of Mobile. And so they're all going through Savannah and through Charleston. And so what this will do, hopefully, is incentivize our automobile manufacturers and others to actually start utilizing our ports more.
Thank you, Representative Brown. So just for information purposes, you chair the Port Committee, which is a new committee, right?
That's correct.
And the port is very important to the state. And in this particular case here, we have this port credit. It's been out there for some time. There's a $12 million cap, but there's not very much utilization of this credit. So compared to what other states are doing, I'm just make sure I'm paraphrasing correctly. If you look at what other states have done, they have more attractive, more incentives to utilize those ports. Currently, the only incentive we have is the first line in the chart. This is actually incenting for more usage and increasing that credit amount. So it'd be enticing people to get credit and presumably, hopefully, utilize the credit. Is that fair?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, sir.
Any questions for the sponsor, Representative Stubbs?
Yes, I appreciate this presentation. I do have a question. As Chairman Garrett mentioned, there hasn't been as much utilization of this credit, and as you, I'm assuming, have communicated with a lot of these large corporations and others who may use our port, are the changes that we're making something that they have requested? I know comparatively speaking to South Carolina and Georgia, we're moving in that direction, but you know, obviously when we look at these tax credits, we heard earlier about the historical tax credits and how there's a greater demand than what we have available. Is this something that they're telling us, hey, if we do it, they'll utilize these credits?
On two fronts, really. On the side that currently, you know, it's all about the bottom line. And does it make more sense to go to South Carolina or to go to Georgia? And this puts us more in line with what they're doing in those neighboring states, and it makes it more enticing to ship through Alabama for Alabama manufactured goods. And then also from an economic development standpoint, this is a way to bring companies into the state that may choose another state to go to because they're more attractive from an economic standpoint. So this is something that the industry in our state is wanting, and it's something that we have in place. We just have to tweak it, and that's what this bill does.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the sponsor?
I do.
Representative Daniels.
Hey, Mr. Brown, how are you doing?
Yeah, thank you. Later.
Question. I know that there were some conversations. I know back in when we visited down the ports back in February, I think, there were some conversations about sort of the North Alabama aspect of this. Is this only exclusive to the state ports, or?
No, this is statewide. It's a statewide bill, and if you actually, on the section there, the TEUs, the VEUs, and the per kilogram, that per kilogram is air freight, so that specifically really addresses Huntsville in particular, and all of our Birmingham, and that have major airports bringing in cargo. So,
any other questions for sponsor? Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So basically, and I serve on your port committee, Mr. Chairman.
And I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. This is a tax credit that's just not currently being used. And so what we're trying to do is add some different levels of it so that it will be used more to grow the port use in all of our facilities. Is that accurate?
100%. Thank you, Representative Collins.
Thank you.
That's absolutely correct.
Any other comments, questions for the sponsor? We have a Representative Keel.
Representative Brown, we discussed the cap that is currently in the bill is at $20 million, and this amendment would change that back to the current $12 million cap, which is not being utilized anyway. And so kind of a baby step here, take it back to $12 million. Everything else in your bill stays the same so that we're able to utilize this, this credit.
Before we take that amendment, do I have a motion to adopt the sub? Representative Collins, second. Representative Drummond, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Sub is adopted. Now Representative Keel has the amendment, which basically maintains the cap, as I understand it, at $12 million. Rather, the bill was proposing an increase to $20 million. Given the fact that the credit's not been utilized yet, we're going to keep the cap at $12 million. That's your.
I make a motion to accept the amendment.
A second? Anybody? Representative Collins seconds. Any discussion about the amendment? Representative Almond?
I guess my question would be, what is the mechanism for if they reach the cap, just come back and ask for more? Or?
That'd be required, yeah. So I think what we would do, that was a commitment I made to the chairman here, was that we would see how the utilization works, and then we would certainly reconsider that. We certainly want to support the port. Right now, given the environment we're in with all the tax bills and tax exemption, tax cuts, we're being very judicious in how we allocate those. And at this point, when you have a credit that's really not being utilized, before we raise the cap, let's get it utilized. So I think that's the spirit of what we're doing today. And appreciate your cooperation.
Oh, well, and thank you for working with me on this, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments for the sponsor? Comments about the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now I'll entertain a motion on the bill. Representative Lubbock makes motion to give the bill favorable report. Second, Representative Drummond. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Bill's given favorable report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Last, HB 375, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. What HB 375 would do is it would exempt gun safes and gun safety devices from the sales and use tax. This is similar to a bill that's already been passed in Tennessee. Tennessee does not charge that. This would promote gun safety, so we can use the state's efforts to promote the purchase of gun safes and things to keep firearms safe. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for the sponsor? Representative Stubbs.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate you bringing this bill. I think in principle, I certainly support this effort to incentivize individuals for gun safes and safety devices as we contemplate the importance of safety in that regard. I do just want to make sure that I'm putting on my former chairman of the county commission hat for a moment. I think it's important for us to recognize, and maybe Chairman Allman can incorporate this in her subcommittee, is the efforts that we're making and the responsibilities we have with the Education Trust Fund and us removing the sales and use tax from counties and municipalities. I think that as we move forward in the coming remainder of this session in the coming years, as we look at the opportunities we have to use the exemption of sales and use tax to incentivize certain things within the Education Trust Fund, we also need to think about the impact that we're having on the counties and municipalities in us potentially exempting the sales and use tax for them as well. Again, I do think that this is very important, and this is a great opportunity, but something that we need to be mindful of moving forward.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I spoke with both the counties, Sonny Brasfeld with the counties, as well as the league on this bill, and they are not opposed to the bill.
So the fiscal note for the Education Trust Fund is $577,000. County funds $144,000. Municipal funds $577,000. So total fiscal 1.3. But I think your point is well taken, because I think again we're looking at policy, and not only with this but other things we just need to be careful. Some issues it may be that we create an exception and we can validate that. Others, I think we don't need to be flippant about it. Representative Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to tell my colleague thank you. I think this is a bill that will certainly be money well saved by those who will be responsible for gun ownership. So I didn't have any questions. I just had a comment, and I wanted to tell you at the proper time I'd like to give this bill a favorable report.
Thank you, ma'am.
One question I would have, thank you, would be the gun safety device. Can you talk about that a little bit, what that means?
Those would be things that are installed on a gun. That's like your trigger, like you have a fingerprint scanner that you can put to make sure that your gun is the person firing is the person with the fingerprint already matched to the gun. Things along that definition is taken straight from the Tennessee law. So what it's used for if there's a lock on the gun that can prohibit, so make sure just that sole individual is the person firing the gun. That's what it's to promote.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for the sponsor? Entertain a motion. Representative Wood makes a motion. She's made the Representative Drummond, second by Representative Wood. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The bill's given a favorable report. Thank you, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Baker, you have another guest that arrived?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I did. I had one of my pages that arrived with that. Edward Bridges, if you might would stand, please, just so that I can recognize you, have you introduced them before the group here that is assembled. Edward is paging this week. Edward is a junior in the Bruton City School System at T.R. Miller High School. And so very glad to have him paging with us this week. Thank you so much, Edward, for being with us.
Thank you. Welcome. So again, for the committee, we should be seeing the Senate pass the education budget possibly this week, maybe next week, and it'll be coming down our way very soon. So let's get ready to get our thinking caps on, sharpen your pencils. And any other questions for the good of the committee or comments? Thank you, Karen Cheeks, for the work this morning. This was a crazy morning this morning, and I apologize for the long substitute. I contributed to the confusion as well, not the long amendment. I amended, which should have been a sub, is what my colleague told me. But anyway, I contributed to the confusion, but I appreciate your help this morning. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
You got your presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm off my game today. We have a presentation. Let's just thank you, HudsonAlpha. Thank you so much. We welcome Dr. Lamb. We certainly appreciate HudsonAlpha's contributions to our state and what you do for education community as well. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Garrett. Good morning, members of the committee. I will keep my remarks brief since I know you already once thought you were ready to be done, so we'll move that through quickly. I've had the incredible pleasure over the last decade of coming and talking to you about what HudsonAlpha does with the funding that you provide for us in the Education Trust Fund for educator programs and teacher training and other components. I have just recently stepped into a new role at HudsonAlpha and have stepped away from education, so it's my incredible pleasure to introduce you to the new Vice President of Education Outreach, Kelly East. Kelly is a trained genetic counselor. She's been part of the education work at HudsonAlpha since the very beginning, and she will now come and tell you about what we do with that funding and convey our words of appreciation. So, Kelly, I will let you take the microphone.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and Committee. Yes, I will keep my remarks relatively brief as well, but I'm just thankful for the opportunity to be here, get to speak to you and express our appreciation for You're allowing us to impact students, teachers, trainees, the public across the state of Alabama. At your seat, you should have a folder that's teal that is some materials that I want to kind of walk through and orient you to, but also for you to take with you. But we are just so appreciative. The support from our allotments goes to support a lot of our student and educator programs, especially the ones that reach across our entire state. So inside your folder, there's a couple of different pages. One of them has a picture of a bead jar. And let me orient you to, so if you came up to Huntsville and to HudsonAlpha, you would see in our education space an entire wall of bead jars, one for every year we've been open. And that's how we track impact in one kind of one small way, a very visual way of the people that we impact through our education programs. And so this is a picture, because we are in Montgomery and not Huntsville, of our most recent bead jar. So last year, this is the kind of the school year of August 21 to summer of 22 that we reached 1.7 million learners through student programs, educator programs, training experiences, public engagement, as well as a whole provision of kits and resources, physical and digital. And so that's our most recent bead jar, and we consistently reach about 1.5 million or more people every year through education. And then right behind that, there is a piece of paper that's got a whole bunch of, it looks like a ribbon map, and that is the map of all of our education programs that runs all the way from elementary students up through the K-12 student population, educators, the public trainees, professionals, really trying to reach across the lifespan and engaging people where they are. Our two main missions in education at HudsonAlpha is to increase the genetic literacy of all of our learners so that they understand genetics, they're not intimidated by genetics, that they're willing to approach it, that they have a resource as they bump into it at school, at work, in the grocery store, in their doctor's office, as they're making decisions, as they see it in the news, that they have that basic literacy and they know where to go for resources, but then also to encourage, inspire, and train that next generation of bioscience workers that will be working across the state in places like HudsonAlpha and beyond, really driving science forward for generations to come. I wanted to call attention to a couple of the programs that are heavily supported by your support and the allotment that we get from the Education Trust Fund, and that is our field trip program. So last year, about 1,200 students came through our doors, not just from Huntsville and Madison County, but really from all across the state. We'll come up and do field trip experiences. More than 30 schools came last year, and for many of the schools, it was multiple classes within it. So thousands of students walking through our doors through field trips. And then also on the educator side, the ability for us to go across the state and meet teachers where they are. One of the things that happened during COVID was we couldn't have as many big gatherings. And so we sometimes talk about the COVID keepers, the things that worked really well as we innovated during COVID that are going to keep going. One of those things was having more smaller teacher workshops, which allowed us to get out into communities where we haven't in years past been. We've been in the bigger cities, and now over the last couple of years, we've started hosting teacher trainings in places like Selma and Florence and Troy, and it's allowed us to engage with more teachers, and that's something that we want to keep on doing and getting out more into lots of places across the state, engaging with educators, where we had, I think, more than about 150 different public schools in Alabama had teachers come to our training in the last 2 years. So really being able to engage with those teachers, hear what they need, getting fresh content into the classrooms and resources. And so field trips, teacher professional development, getting resources out, partnering with Science in Motion and AMSTI, getting our kits into their hubs so that they can help distribute our materials into the classes is also a big piece of what we do with the funds that allows us to get resources across the state, even when we are up kind of at one end of it. So those are some of our programs. And then I also want to draw your attention to the final page, which is a map. which we pulled recently. So this has data in it that really starts at the fall of 2021, which was still, we were still pretty limited at that point, but over the last 2 years, we're really proud of the fact that 65% of Alabama public high schools have been interacting with us. If you go back further than that, we get up to almost 100%, but this is really just the last 2 years. It shows that statewide reach, but also it shows some areas of opportunity. We would love for this map to be solid dark blue. So that's my kind of call to you guys. If there are areas here that are lighter colors that you have context, you can think of creative ways for us to connect, where you can help connect us to teachers and schools in those areas. We would welcome those connections so that we can build stronger relationships across the entire state. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys have. We also have in your folder a copy of our most recent guidebook. This is something that we've been publishing once a year for a number of years now. But inside there are all kinds of stories of science, discovery, innovation from the past year that are written in a language that teachers and students can engage with it. And we thought it might be of interest to you all as well. So thank you so much for supporting us and allowing us to reach students and teachers across the state. And we look forward to continuing this work this summer, next year, and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zeese. Any comments or questions? Representative Ellis?
First, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you're doing. Congratulations on your new position. I have a couple of questions. One, on the bead jar that you've got, it says 1.6 million digital interactions. Who counts the beads that go in the jar?
Yeah, not me and not an intern. That is that's the math part of STEM, where
Right.
you can calculate how much a bead weighs and then figure out how much.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Now,
me and a scale is how.
Now on to a serious question. On the map, which thank you for including that, I'm proud to see that Shelby County is 100%. But then in the Lowndes counties and some of the other counties, because in my opinion, that's where we move the needle. Is it a funding issue? Is it a contact issue? Because I hear you call for contacts and help get contacts. What's the issue, and how can we better reach where I think we need the most?
Yeah, where impact goes a long way. That's a great question, and I think that's a question I think could be addressed in a number of ways, and there's different ways that you could address that. Some of that is a contact issue. You know, that if we have contacts, we would love to engage with them. It also, you mentioned funding. Things like our teacher professional development workshops and our field trips, those things fill very quickly. And so the interest in some of these programs outpaces our capacity to implement them. And so being able to offer more of those trainings, more of those experiences certainly would allow us to reach a broader audience and be able to really invest in going and building those connections. But this is fresh off the press, and will be ripe conversations between me and my team as we look forward and where are the places that we need to take some extra steps to go build those relationships that aren't naturally flowing our direction, that we don't want to sit back and wait for people to come to us.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would love to see some initiative to target those areas. And I know Representative Lovin would love to assist any way you can with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I look forward to being back next year, and you can hold me accountable to bring this and next year's map, and we'll see, hopefully we'll see some of that movement.
Thank you. Your comment about the bead jar made me chuckle, because back in my training when I was in the steel industry and a controller and CFO, one of my jobs was to count scrap piles, and that was interesting. I can help you on the bead deal. Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice forward to working with you. I actually just wanted to follow up on what Representative Ellis was saying, is that when I've reached out to my teachers that are participated and my students, they are overwhelmed by what they have experienced there, because it was definitely exceeded their expectations. And so as legislators, if you look in your areas not dark blue, I encourage you to make sure that this is available to all of your teachers in areas. And I know I started simply by y'all emailed us what was going to be available, and I sent it to my teachers. So that helps.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
be happy to do that.
Representative Daniels.
Yes, pleasure meeting you, Kelly. Some of the counties that are in white, I want to make certain that Neil and Carter understand that I'm from Bullock County, although I represent Madison County, and I want to be helpful with making certain that the appropriate outreach happens in at least 4 of the 5 of the counties that I see on here. I have personal connections to those counties, and so we certainly, as a committee, whether it's the Trust Fund, Education Trust Fund Committee, as well as the Education Policy Committee, we pride ourselves on focusing on areas that are historically in the Black Belt and areas that have a historical pipeline of underperforming schools. And so the expectation is if we're ever going to move the needle, then all hands got to be on deck. This is not just saying that HudsonAlpha has to do a better job of the outreach and getting in these communities. That's all entities that are receiving money from the Education Trust Fund that tells us that they're moving the needle. Mm-hmm. And so the expectation is that those communities are prioritized as we move forward.
Yep, agreed.
Representative Drummond.
I am so intrigued. I actually started reading everything, and I'm like, Representative Ellis, you said that you all have found out why people don't like broccoli. I want to know what the answer is. But a serious question, and following up on what they were talking about in those areas that I think we all are passionate because we all feel that's where a lot of Alabama's rich future lies, not only economic development, but in so many other areas. What is the capacity that those areas have to possess? I'm trying to find out, what are you all looking for in order? Is it just a willingness to become involved, or is there some ownership from the community that they have to have?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And when we talk about getting involved, that can look like a lot of different things. That schools can take our resources and can implement them to bring those engaging hands-on activities into the classroom. We've got educators on our team that are classroom educators, that are expert educators that will go into classrooms, that are willing to have them and co-teach and do some embedded teaching and training with teachers, or when teachers come to our workshops. And that's part of what being able to get out in doing more of those workshops across the state, where teachers aren't having to drive as far to get to one, where we are using our funding to do things like pay for substitute reimbursement and pay for travel, and trying to reduce those barriers to get teachers into those programs. But that engagement can look like a lot of things, but it starts with a relationship between our education team and those teachers on the ground in front of those students, and figuring out what their needs are and meeting them. You want to speak to that?
I think it's also worth noting, and I appreciate the comments about the parts of the map that are not as dark as we'd like them to be. In the fall of 2021, many of our school systems were just now coming back from a really challenging previous school year, and they were focusing on what they needed to be focusing on, their students, and dealing with learning lags. But often the principals were hesitant to let their teachers leave to come to workshops and conferences, and they were less likely to engage with us on some things because they had their hands full. So in previous years, we've had a lot of interactions with many of these counties, and we continued to reach out. It was just during this window, they had their focus on other things, which is why I think when Kelly comes back next year, you will see more of these counties back in the blue, because they are now able to put their focus back on some of these professional development pieces.
Right, not to mention the changing over in staff and teachers and new teachers that have come into the classroom since COVID, that we have to build those relationships with. Yeah.
Representative Daniels.
Yeah, so we certainly appreciate the work that y'all do. Certainly had a chance to visit. Lucky to have you guys in the Madison County area, but serving the entire state. I would say that as we move forward, as I mentioned before, our priority is serving the unserved areas. If in fact you run into any challenges, there are legislators that represent those areas that would be happy to dig in on that. And if you can't reach your legislator, whether it's, just reach out to me, and I'll make certain that it get down there, because at the end of the day, we're about outcomes. And based upon the things that you guys provide and the resources you provide across the state, it's showing we could see from the data that it is working, but we want it to work for everyone.
Thank you again for being with us today. Thank you again for the service to your state, for all that you do, and you're welcome anytime. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. Going back, before we adjourn, to go back to the subcommittee, Representative Almond, as you take the lead in that, I would ask that Representative Drummond, Representative Collins participate. Anyone else who would like to and be involved in that, please reach out to Representative Drummond.
I think Representative Chestnut, we just have to have one male on there.
Representative Chestnut, would you be willing to be on that committee?
Volunteer someone else.
I want him.
I'll let you. Representative Almond, that's fine. Representative Chestnut's been nominated, so I think if Representative Almond, Drummond, Collins, and Faulkner would work on that, if y'all are agreeable to that, for various reasons. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're adjourned.